Just ahead on American Black Journal, the president of Wayne State University talks about plans for the fall semester amid the COVID-19 pandemic, plus help for the disabled during the public health crisis, and a theater production about Detroit's Black Bottom neighborhood. American Black Journal starts now.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. The start of school is just a month away, and one of the biggest debates across the country centers on how to educate students safely during the pandemic. Detroit's Wayne State University is planning both in-person and online learning for the fall semester. I spoke with President Roy Wilson about the university's plans to reopen amid COVID-19. President M. Roy Wilson, Wayne State University, thanks for being here on American Black Journal.
Always a pleasure.
So I want to start with the opening of school, which is kind of just around the corner.
Right.
It seems maybe more distant this year because it seems like there's so much uncertainty. Each week brings new numbers and new possibilities and circumstances that administrators like yourself have to kind of think through and then react to. So give me an idea of where you are today with what the opening of school will look like and what you think it will look like when we get to Labor Day in September.
Yeah, so the first thing I guess I would say is that a lot of universities started announcing their decisions about whether they're going to be online or in person very early on. Some in May, for example, many actually in May. And I think predominantly those announcements were that they were going to be in person. And I think a lot of that had to do with understanding that students, that's what students wanted, and wanting to get as much enrollment as possible, and thinking that if they said they were going to be online, that might affect their enrollment numbers. And then California State came out and said, and they have almost 500,000 students, 400 and some thousand students, and they said they were going to be fully online. And so that kind of changed the landscape a little bit. And other universities then said, okay, well, if they're going to do it, then we're going to be online too. I really didn't see a point in making a decision so early. And so we consciously decided we were going to wait as long as possible and make a decision as close to when we're going to open as we can. And we felt that we needed a little over a month in order for students to be able to, get their classes and faculty to get prepared, and for the registrar to get the classes on up and so forth. So we decided that July 15th was when we were going to make our decision. So we made our decisions on July 15th. And the situation in terms of the public's health on July 15th is very different from what it was in May.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to be closer to what the situation is going to be third week of August when we start school, because we waited. And so there may be some changes, but it's going to be slight. It won't be a complete reversal. And so where we are now is we're going to be about 20% of our classes will be in person.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those will be classes like dance and art and laboratories and things like that. About 46%, I think it came out to be, is going to be remote or online. 2% will be hybrid, which is mainly online, but having to come in for certain things. And then we have a lot of classes that are individually arranged, because we have a lot of graduate students and PhD students, and they're doing PhD theses and other things, independent research projects, those kind of things, and that makes up the remainder. And so we think that we're going to be pretty close to that when school starts the third week of August.
Yeah. Do you anticipate that the experience for students will be consistent with what their expectations are? I think, everyone misses all time in class.
Yeah.
Will these hybrid approaches work?
Well, I think the expectations of the students are changing. I think that they're becoming much more realistic to the reality that this is not going to be a normal school year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, now that's not to say that a lot of the things that they want out of school they can't do, because they're very innovative and they're very tech savvy, and I'm amazed at some of the ways they're finding to connect with their colleagues and still do a lot of the social programming that goes on, but doing it in a virtual way. But it's not going to be the same as what it was pre-COVID. And I think there's a realization that has sunk in that it is a different world right now, and it's probably likely going to be like this for at least the rest of this year. And my bet would be that into half of next year.
I want to change subjects slightly and talk about the university's graduation rates, both for all students and for Black students. It's a subject that has been a real challenge for Wayne for a long time. You've done a lot of work with your administration trying to move the numbers. The good news is the numbers are moving. You've more than tripled, I think, the graduation rate for Black students, but you still have a lot of critics, including some members of the Board of Governors there at the university, who say it's just not enough, that it's not going fast enough. How do you respond to that?
Yeah. So the first thing is, let's just get the facts out. In 2011 or 2012, when the board decided that something just absolutely had to be done, our graduation rate was 7% for African Americans and 26% generally. And we made a strategic plan a couple of years later, a year after I came, in which we targeted 50% as what we wanted our graduation rate to be by 2021. We reached the 50% this year. And by the end of this summer, it'll be about 52%, between 51 and 52. So we reached that. Our Black graduation rate has increased from the 7% to this summer, it's 24%. Our 5-year graduation rate, so that 5-year will be the class that came in 2015 cohort, is already at 25%. So the 6-year graduation rate for that class is going to be well over 25%, since the 5-year is already 25%. So it could be, well into the 30s for all I know. So I think that a lot of progress has been made, and certainly from externally, the external world sees that and has put Wayne State up as a model for improving graduation rates, including for underrepresented minority populations. And as a result, we did receive, national awards for doing that. The objective data shows that we are in 2017, I think it was. I haven't checked most recently, but at the year that we received a national award, the APLU Award for Degree Completion, we were #1 in the country in terms of the rate of improvement of our graduation, both for African Americans and the general body, from where it was in 2011 to, at that point, 2017. So I think we're making good progress. Now, are we satisfied? Heck no, of course not. And we'll continue to keep improving. We're not plateauing. We're continuing to improve. Our numbers for African Americans are just continuing to go up and up and up. So we won't be satisfied until there's no disparity at all between our white students and our African American students. But can't do that overnight. It is going to take a little bit of time. There are a lot of factors involved.
Yeah. What's a reasonable time frame to put on that if now is not the reasonable answer?
Well, I think the trajectory we're on, that we should be able to do that in another 5-6 years. That's very aggressive, but when you think about it, I mean, we went from 7% to, let's say, 25%. If we can go from that now, this 25%, and just keep on the same trajectory, we should be at 50% in another, let's say, 6 years, which is what I'm counting from 2011 to 2017. So that's aggressive, but we're going to do our best to try to get there.
Okay. All right. Emeroy Wilson, president of Wayne State University. Always great to catch up with you. Thank you for being with us on American Black Journal.
Always good to see you.
This year marks the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which bans discrimination against people with disabilities. However, the milestone celebration is tempered by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Disability Network Wayne County, Detroit is working to meet the needs of the disabled and disadvantaged during the crisis. I talked with the organization's executive director, Lori Hill Sanders. The pandemic, of course, has been really tough on everybody and has forced a lot of changes in all of our lives. Mm-hmm. But when I think about people who have other challenges, whether it's disabilities or they're veterans or they're homeless, I just imagine that those challenges grow exponentially. Talk about what has happened for people in those circumstances during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Initially, Steve, that's truly what it was, a pandemic. In our center, we actually stopped face-to-face contact with our consumers probably March the 10th or 11th. And individuals were still coming in prior to that point. They didn't have a clue what COVID-19 even meant. So there was truly a lack of education in my community, being in servicing Detroit and Wayne County. There was a huge lack of communication, lack of education. And I think that our numbers spoke to that lack of education about what was truly going on, what needed to be done, how individuals could kind of protect themselves against the virus. So I just feel that our community was at a true disadvantage because that education was not there and they just didn't have a clue what we were getting ready to be hit with and what we were facing.
So fast forward to today, do you feel like you're in a better situation in that regard? Are people being able to distance the way they need to and take care the way they're supposed to?
I feel that we're truly in a better situation. And what inspires me during this pandemic is that the Disability Network has been able to be a part of that turnaround. And that's what truly makes me feel it's a situation where you almost turn lemons into lemonade. And we've been able to do that during this pandemic. We're providing our consumers with education. We're providing them with what their rights and responsibilities are in the workplace, which is very important because, economic sustainability is very important. So when you're talking about being concerned about going to work because you don't know how to safeguard yourself based on the information that the CDC has provided us with, that truly puts an individual at a stronger disadvantage. So providing them with that education during this time, knowing what to expect during an interview, knowing that, the employer can take your temperature. If you're showing symptoms, the employer can send you home. So just really providing them with that education so that they know what to expect at the workplace, providing them with that education and the tools that they'll need so that they can safeguard themselves and continue to work to support themselves and their family. Being able to be a part of that is truly, it's the best feeling ever to know that you're a part of that.
Sure. This is also, of course, the 30th anniversary of the passage of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act.
That is correct.
Talk about how significant that is. 30 years. That's
30 years. 30 years. That's really exciting. The unfortunate thing about this, the pandemic, we haven't been able to celebrate it. And the way that a lot of the CILs have planned to be celebrating it this year, basically everything that we're doing is virtual now. So we're working through it. But, if you had said 2 years ago, delivering services virtually, being able to celebrate virtually, no one could phantom this. But, a lot of the changes in terms of service delivery that I've had to change, these are things that are going to go on beyond COVID for us. And it took a lot of work. It was just took lots of thought into things, but I'm glad where we are right now because we've been able to deliver services to our consumers web-based, virtually, providing them with the technology that they need, whether it's an iPad, whether it's a hotspot, so that they're able to still receive services virtually and we can still meet their needs. And being able to do this remotely because all of my staff are still remotely working from home. We do have specialized services that we really have to get out into the community to do. Right now we're doing food distributions, making sure that our seniors and our individuals that could not get out, because at one point, when individuals were being tested and they were being tested as positive, they weren't supposed to be going out to the grocery store or the food banks or anywhere that was providing food. So we had to design services that actually had us out in the community, dropping off those food boxes to our consumers. And, we've done that from the beginning. Now we're kind of changing the landscape of that even. We've partnered with a urban garden. It's Featherstone. It's right in the city of Detroit. So now we're actually able to provide our consumers with live vegetables and greens. We're providing them not in a box, but it's actually in a tray and it's still growing. And we're providing them with recipe cards. So working through this whole pandemic has allowed us to be innovative and creative in terms of how we deliver services to individuals in the community.
And it's really great that some of those things will extend beyond the emergency and change the way that you interact with your customers. Okay, Lori Hill Sanders, was great to have you here on American Voice.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. The arts have taken a big hit because of a ban on large gatherings due to COVID-19. Detroit's Plowshares Theatre company was working on a play called Hastings Street when the pandemic struck. The story is set in 1949 in Detroit's thriving African-American business district known as Black Bottom. The neighborhood was later demolished to make way for urban renewal and highway construction. One Detroit's Will Glover spoke with the team behind the theater production.
So let's get right into it. You guys are creating a play around Hastings Street, which has a lot to do with the highways that were built during urban renewal and the neighborhoods like Black Bottom that were destroyed in the process. So Gary, we'll start with you. Was this something that was in the works already before, the world kind of got put on pause and also exploded at the same time? Or was this something that was sparked by everything that's going on?
Well, actually, we had applied to the Kresge Foundation for the seed money necessary to commission both Chris and John for this project roughly around the spring of last year. We got awarded the funds in August, and we began working on it after that. But yeah, so this has been in the works for almost a year now.
John, what was your initial thought when you started taking on this project?
Well, there were so many. When I've known Gary for years, and when we started talking about this project, he asked me to come on board, and I wrote the book. And then Chris and I collaborated on the music and lyrics. I really wanted to make sure we got it right. And as somebody that is from this community, moved away. I lived in New York for a while. I was on tour for a while. I moved back home in 2017. And I really felt like there were a lot of parallels. And I still feel like there are a lot of parallels between what was happening in Detroit in the late 40s, early 50s, and what's happening in our community right now. And the way that we're dealing with this struggle at the nexus of gentrification and redevelopment. And when you're really thinking about building out, like I personally hate the idea of a new Detroit, because Detroiters have been here and my family's been here. We've all been here and been working and been trying to deal with having a lack of access to opportunity and having a lack of access to education and redevelopment, and still being one of the foundational communities in the world. Especially when you think about what we've contributed to the history of arts and of arts activism. And so it was really, I wanted to make sure, writing the book and helping to create these characters, that we stayed true to our community and really helped to tell a story that was both unique to Detroit, but it had themes that were archetypal and universal.
Right. So, Chris, what was your first thought when you were approached to do this project? What was the first thing that came to mind for you?
It was really interesting is that Gary and I actually worked together on my first musical, Jim Crow's Tears. Gary wrote the book for it, and I wrote the lyrics and the music. And after I completed that project, I was kind of thinking, if I ever did another musical, if I ever, ventured into that world again, what would it be about? And I started researching more, and this is, almost a decade ago, started researching Black Bottom and got really kind of fascinated by the history of Black Bottom. So when this came up, it was just incredibly exciting to be able to actually put to use some of that research and some of that history in Detroit. And I think it's just a very, very, very timely piece. And kind of mirroring what John was saying, I think we're seeing a lot of the same themes that are starting to take place now in Detroit, and this whole idea of this like push and pull with the white and Black community. So I think it's just a really important reflection on what was, so that people understand that, Detroit's been here and will continue to be.
So we understand that this story is based on history. This play is coming out of things that actually happened. But John, tell me a little bit about what the actual story is. How are we going to be taken through that history and experience it?
Sure. So one thing that the three of us talked about from the beginning is making sure that we were creating a piece and creating a story that, while it was true to life, was not re-traumatizing. There's a diversity of Black experiences, and we didn't want to see them get reduced down to archetypes, right? And so what you're going to do is, people that come see Hastings Street are going to follow the story of the Carson family. And it's one family who is established in the Black Bottom and Paradise Valley community. They have their own general store, and they want to try to see their business stay and grow and maintain. But all these things and all these forces are changing around them. In the middle of all that, the son of the family, Robert Jr., Bobby, comes home from World War II as a Tuskegee Airman and is dealing with all the things that war vets have to deal with. that struggle of PTSD in a time before it was called PTSD and really recognized. And so we try to use his struggle and the family's struggle to mirror the parallel conversations that were happening in the city around what it means to take on responsibility, around what it means to come home in a world that's changing, an environment that's changing around you. And then also balanced with just the joy and the energy that was the jazz and blues that came out of the 40s and 50s, and using that from an oral sense to create a tapestry and world build really around what the city is and around what the family has to work through and try to overcome together.
Plowshares Theatre Company plans to present Hastings Street to audiences when the pandemic ends. That's our program for today. For more information on our guests, check out AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.